Yes, we're going to start with the last part of the day. Always difficult at this time of the day. So we will have to finalize session 5 on new data sources. We have two more presentations now from the international organizations. We'll have a first presentation by Maria Rosa of the OECD. She will do a presentation which was put together by her colleagues, but she will explain this. On the analytical database on individual multinationals and their affiliates, also called ADIMA. Then after that we'll have a presentation for Zolt from Eurostat, who will also present on behalf of his colleagues on the new data sources for the Eurogroups register. We'll do the same format as before the break. We'll have the two presentations and then we'll gather some questions which Zolt and Maria Rosa then can answer. We'll start with Maria Rosa. 15 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ronald. So I will present work that is carried out by a team of colleagues from the Trade and Competitiveness Statistics Division in the Statistics and Data Directorate of the OECD, and the colleague could unfortunately not join us for the meeting. So this work is aimed at building a new database, which has been named the OECD Analytical Database on Individual Multinational and their affiliate, with the acronym ADIMA. So what is the motivation for the work and for this new database? I think I do not have to convince you about the increasing role of multinationals in the world economy, and also about the importance of gaining a better understanding of the activity of multinationals across countries via reliable quantitative information, but also timely information on the restructuring that this multinational may undertake. The statistical information which is today available, we know that there is a lot of information, but this comprehensive view of multinational is in a sense still missing, and this is due to the complexity, the obvious complexity of multinationals' enterprise activities. In part, this is by design because of fiscal optimizations. There are also legal restrictions to the sharing of information between statistical offices across the border. But this, as we know, has generate a lot of inconsistencies, asymmetries, which had important impact on measures, important macroeconomic measures, including measures of GDP. So the, sorry, I went too fast. What the ADIMA database wants to achieve is to provide information on the scale and scope of the international activity of MNEs with this, as I mentioned before, comprehensive view to support the analytical and policy work in this area. And the ADIMA, the project involved 3 building blocks: a register of M&Es with parent and affiliate structures, a series of economic indicators at both the level of M&Es and the individual countries in which an M&Es operate. And a third block is the monitoring tools that is aimed at providing timely information on restructuring of multinational that would aid the work of national compilers. So the colleagues working on this project are not reinventing the wheel, but they take into account and they build on all the work that is done in this area, and in particular 3 international efforts that are currently ongoing. One is the EGR, the European Eurogroup register, that will be the object of the next presentation. Then there is the Global LEI Foundation, which was presented earlier this morning. And then there is obviously all the work that is done at the national level by the profiling team. So this is the structure, the 3 blocks of the new database with the register, the indicators, and the monitor tools. And you see in the slide what are the variables that are aimed to be included in the different pillars. I will not go through the variables because they are, the name of the variable is quite self-explaining, which does not mean at all that compiling and putting together the information for this variable is an easy task. On the contrary, maybe the only one that is less obvious is the entropy measures of internationalization. And with this type of entropy measures, what is meant is, for instance, one example is for a given M&Es, what is the number of countries in which it operates as a share of the total number of countries in the world. Or a second measure of internationalization would be for an M&Es, how many international affiliates it has as a share of the total number of affiliates of the multinational. Now, what is the methodological approach of this project? It is based in a combination of traditional data sources with new emerging sources and new method of data analysis. In practice, what does it mean? For instance, there are traditional sources of information on multinational, in particular the company annual report that are publicly available. And these are, the information is search and explored with new methods such as the XBRL assisted scraping, where XBRL is the extensible business language, business reporting language. Emerging sources, and this was the references to the LEI, or innovative sources and innovative methods such as the web scraping of M&E's website, which is done with type of methods of text analytics. So these are the three methods that are currently used in the construction of ADIMA. And the project, which is at a stage of proof of concept, has already done validation of a first result, and validation is done by crossing information from obtained from the different method and sources. And also an important point is the alignment of concept with measures that are drawn with the different methods with the official statistical concept. The result of this exercise should be that results that are timely, that are scalable, because what is now being tested, and I will give you some number for a certain sample, a group of multinational, should be reproduced to a larger number of multinational, and the data, because all the data that is used for this database is publicly available data. So the purpose is then to publish all the information that is collected and compiled in this database. So there will not be confidential information. To the extent possible, there will not be confidential information, but all the information will be disseminated. So the final, let's say not the final, but the target for 2020 is to have the 500 largest, and I'll say in a minute what it means, largest MNEs globally, across the world. My colleagues working on this project are prepared to have by the end now of 2018 the first 100 larger MNEs ready, the data for these 100 MNEs ready. And as I mentioned before, there is a proof of concept which is being completed on 37 US MNEs. What are the selection criteria, so how these largest MNEs were selected? So based on the ranking top down on the total revenues for 2016. Because the information used is all publicly available, so one requirement and an important, a key source of information are the financial report and accounts. So one key requirement is that the companies are listed on a stock exchange. And finally, multinationals, so the target MNEs should correspond to the what is the international accepted definition of being a multinational, which is to have one affiliate in at least one country outside the home countries of the enterprise. So this is the description of the project so far. I already said that the current sample of 37 US enterprises will become, at the end of the year, 100 enterprises, MNEs, and then 500 by 2020. The current method, the three different methods that are currently used are the object of further thinking and refinement. And there are also there is also exploration on possible new data sources, in particular to develop the geographical breakdown, which is one of the innovation of the ADIMA database, the fact that there is not only the consolidated report, but the consolidated variable, but the breakdown by country. So with, for the moment in mind, as a target, two variables, the assets and the employment as first priority. And so the type of information that will be searched is the social media or job vacancies, websites. So my colleagues try to be quite innovative and creative in this exercise of new data, in this search of new data sources. Validation of the data at the moment is done by the team with, and I realize that there are no, in this presentation, there are no graphs that report the result of exercise of crossing information that they did. Is not, I don't think it was not done to hidden any information, because I saw this result and they are quite rather positive. So I think they are available in the short paper for this meeting, or in the longest paper that they produced on this presenting the project. So I was saying about validation, there has been already cooperation with the colleagues of the Eurogroup, because obviously they have a lot of experience and already a lot of information compiled, at least as concerned the European MNEs. And then I'm done with this. And then they have also started, or will start soon, bilateral exchanges with countries. And in terms of the third part of the database, which is the monitoring tools, I think this is still for the next future. The work has not yet started. So that's all. Thank you for your attention. And very important, this is the name and the contact of my colleague working on the project.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rosa. So yes, so this shows the specific work for the the multinational enterprises, and that's also what Zsolt is the, as far as I understand, and I know Zsolt, is that he is the expert on Eurogroup Register. So we're very happy that he will do this presentation for his colleagues. On the use of new data sources. Zsolt, it's all yours.
Okay, so good afternoon, dear colleagues. This is a paper prepared by my colleagues Dimitar Nenkov and David Broska, supported by Leipzig University researchers. And they were running a project for looking for new data sources for the Eurogroups register. So I will show you quickly what is the Eurogroups register, what data they try to collect from DBpedia database, and the objective of this study, and also the results of this action. So I will not go into details, but for those who don't know, the EGR is the register of the European countries, European Union countries on multinational enterprise groups. Eurostat is running this register, and we try to cover all multinational groups present in Europe, can be European, non-European. This is a statistical register only for statistical purposes. And the statisticians in national offices and in the EU central banks can use this register as a frame for the national statistics. So it's a basic infrastructure and important to tell, restricted for EU countries and EFTA countries and for statistical use only. So in the EGR, we have the data from different sources. primarily for the EU and EFTA, our sources are national business registers. I think for EU and EFTA, we are quite well covered. The issue is when we step outside EU and EFTA countries. So certainly we miss some data outside the EU and EFTA, as well as we miss the attributes of the groups. So we are constantly analyzing possible data sources. For the moment, outside of Europe is only covered by commercial sources, but we would like to get new sources, different opportunities to increase the quality and completeness of the EGR. So, for example, GLIFE, ADIMA could be our source for the future, especially if level 2 data will be a big volume and we can get it to EGR. We already have some discussions with this on GLIFE. And what this presentation will present, we also miss global figures on the groups. So total employment, total turnover, total assets of the multinational enterprise groups. And these figures we would like to collect in a new, innovative way. So what we found, Wikipedia company profiles are quite informative, and those could be used for our purposes. So you can see in the Wikipedia profiles to each group, there are some small boxes where you can see quite relevant information for EGR, what we're really looking for, like headquarters, which is our global decision center, revenue, which could be turnover, number of employees on group level. Also, you can find the total assets in some of the groups. So we found this could be a tool, if we could somehow automated-wise use to our system, could help to improve the EGR coverage and quality on these specific variables. Wikipedia is not a structured database, so it's a big database, but there is a project which extracts structured data from Wikipedia, and this is called DBpedia. And the DBpedia allows to execute sophisticated queries against the DBpedia database. So our starting point was to use the DBpedia. This is a non-profit project, and they do frequently copies of the Wikipedia data into a structured format. So my colleagues started on this, and the goal of the project was to create an interface which handles a list of group names and returns to the names results with detailed information on those enterprise groups. So I simply send them Siemens, and they deliver, and this interface delivers back total employment, total turnover, total assets, some other characteristics like global decision center, this kind of information. We contracted Leipzig University, and we gave them 73 groups, group names only, to start this exercise and start the queries on DBpedia. So I will show you the results of this pilot action, of this proof of concept. According to different criteria, like coverage, so how many matches we could have, we could found, or the Leipzig University colleagues could found on these 73 requests. Completeness, what values they could deliver. Accuracy, what is the accuracy of these values. This we compare to annual report data. And also on timeliness, because in EGR we have yearly frames, so we need really for 2016 information, and not something before or after. So first criterion was coverage. So we found that out of these 73 M&E groups, 70 groups could be matched via the methods developed by the Leipzig University colleagues to DBpedia. So for 73 requests, we could get back at least some data for 70 groups. Those groups were selected mostly from Europe, small ones, mostly medium ones and large ones. From different regions, south, east, west, so we try to make a mixture of the groups. They try to match these groups based on the names, first on the English Wikipedia sites, then later on other versions like German, French, Italian, they had a preference list. This is presented in detail in the paper. And what they could deliver, so we found that the matching was successful, 70 out of 73 were matched, but if you check the different attributes what they delivered, those are less promising. So for example, okay, description they could deliver to 95%. Something is there in the Wikipedia company profile kind of description, but main activity codes, what we have in our system, of course, they couldn't deliver. There are no NACE codes in the Wikipedia, so it should be improved. Groups, persons employed, they could find to 42%. This was one of the key variables. We looked for total assets, only 16%, turnover, 37%. But web address, for example, it's quite heavy. It's 91%, so it's a good coverage. So all this information we have in our system, And this information could be used after, of course, validation and checking the accuracy of these figures while they're delivered. So these numbers are only for the 2016 data, which was our reference here in the query. We did some checks. We compared the delivered information, which can be found on this horizontal axis, so GEG global data for the enterprise groups. This is the persons employed for these groups. And on the vertical axis, you can see the data from the annual reports. So this was manually compiled, this list. You can see what is there in DBpedia. It's exactly what is in the annual report. So I think that these Wikipedia pages are updated directly by the groups. I think they have a person for this. They also kind of try to show the latest picture on the groups. If you see descriptions, you mostly see that these are updated by the groups because they always say we're the best group delivering these solutions for you. So you can see that it's kind of a marketing policy also to update these pages. So concerning employment, the data are very good, very accurate. Concerning turnover, we also found good results, but there are some very few turnovers close to zero. And we also found that these are probably and mostly because of different modifiers or the limiters, because the different language versions of Wikipedia deliver the data in different formats. Sometimes they deliver the separators with the dot, can be also the comma. So the algorithm was not able to distinguish, to make difference on these. So for example, for intercontinental hotels, this is the turnover in the annual report, 1,715 million. And in the DBpedia value, which was generated to us, is the same number, but the decimals are on the wrong place. So if you have an algorithm, it will give you some result. What we found here, that here manual validation is needed, especially for these numbers. Total assets, we had a few matches, but those are also according to the annual reports, what data were registered in the annual reports. But here we had a lower matching rate and a lower number of records delivered. There is also very important for each year the timeliness. So we do yearly cycles, and here you can see that in the DBpedia interface, they also have a historical mode, and with the historical mode, this algorithm was able to also identify those characteristics for different reference years. So we found for the reference year, which was in our target 2016, those number of matches, but also for the previous reference years, we found some data, historical data, and also for the reference year, which is actually newer, we already find some number of employees data. Probably those groups reported earlier on the 2017 business year. What is the conclusion? So this was just a proof of concept, a pilot exercise to see that are we able or are our contractors able to deliver such a system where we simply deliver them the name of the group and they are delivering them back based on the DBpedia, the key figures on the global groups, the global figures on the groups. So complete automatization was not achieved. Human intervention is needed, especially for turnover figures. This is our experience. The values are below 50% for the key variables what we identified. So persons employed 42, turnover 37, assets only 16. And the numbers are below 50%, but what was delivered, those are actually good quality data. So those are in line with the data which are published on the group's websites. So now we have the pilot finished, and now it's the time to Eurostat management staff to decide, do we continue or not? This is a decision by our management and also the management of the big data project in Eurostat, because we are part of Eurostat big data activities. So I think things are promising, but as we see, human intervention cannot be avoided. To have good data, such data what we really can load into EGR to share within our community. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer, but mostly my colleagues on our functional email can give you the appropriate answers to all the questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we got 3 spots here, so I can sit. So I would like to open the floor for discussions. Let me still go there. So these are activities from the international organizations, and actually also the UN is trying to do something in this area of getting a handle on the group structures of multinationals across countries to harmonize better and get better information on this. So to open the discussion, so I'll start off with the question, and then we'll open the floor to add on to this. One of the things which I was thinking when Maria Rosa, when you were talking, is how do you update this, right? So I can already see from I mean, it is from your colleagues that it is a lot of effort to get the 37 to 100 multinationals structured. But what is the idea about keeping it up to date? Given also that multinationals might change a structure fairly quickly. Same question, Zolt, also on your side. And there I thought Zolt is in the discussions, and I don't know if you were involved in those discussions about this pilot project, in how far artificial intelligence or machine learning could have actually improved further the finding of matches. You indicated there's no NACE code in the description of these enterprises, but it might be a description of what they do, and then you might be able to match that to a NACE code. So things like that. If there was any discussion on that, to see if you can pull more information from the Wikipedia site than what you got straightforward from it. So those are questions from my side, and open the floor to add some to these questions, please. Barry from the Netherlands, Rico from the Netherlands. Oh, there's a Barry. Okay.
Thank you. My question is to the OECD. I have a question and I have a remark. I really like the concept that you start with a small population of enterprise groups, which you want to have good in the business register. So start with 100 and then build up to 500. I think that's a very excellent idea. What for me wasn't quite clear is that you stated in, I think, the second or the third slide that you were building on and complement other initiatives, like the EGR, like the GLIDE. For me, it wasn't completely clear on that, because it seemed to me a bit that you were doing the same. So that directs me to the other question, is that who will then be the users of this, and why couldn't be a joint project, for example, with the EGR and strengthen that like that?
Thank you. More questions? Roland, and then Elham.
Thank you. My question is to both.
Did you have a question? Oh, I thought that you put this. I thought actually that you had put it up for Barry, that you were being very generous.
He's got his own. So I got one for what can I do? Or did you assign the floor to somebody else? Yeah.
Please go ahead, Rico, and then I'll go back to Roland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got one for Maria Rosa. Is it possible also to use this as a source for profiling, or for national profiling or global profiling? That's one. So is it possible to get access to this information? And for Zolt, I have a question. I didn't see any identifiers in this, so it's only concerning the whole group. So we do not have any idea of how many subsidiaries or legal units are below it, and where it's about reporting. And the second question on Zolt is from, okay, you selected 73 enterprise groups or global enterprise groups now, and you link them to these BPV media. I was wondering if in how many cases it is not matched. So you have, of course, 70 out of 73, but if you would apply this to the whole population in the EGR, how many is expected that we cannot find in this source, or we should do everything a little bit different to find the right.
Thank you, Rico. Roland, please.
Thank you. My question is to both of the presenters, and I want to use the new English word that I learned today, which is veracity. Trust in the data. So what made me curious was the presentation of Zolt about the accuracy of the two, say, sources that you compared, which was so perfect that it brought me to the suspicion that maybe one stems from the other. So what is the benchmark for the data? Or what are the quality assurance mechanisms, or what is the quality procurement that you have for these data collections?
Thank you, Roland. Ellen, please.
It's not a question, it's for the Eurostat, but I'm thinking loud. Okay, the Wikipedia, who provide the Wikipedia with the information about companies? I don't know. If we know who, I think the Wikipedia, every company, they put their data just, and they don't have a template for that. If Eurostat contact them and give them the template, with the, there will be no need for you to have your database media. I mean, why? Always, I believe the ownership. Always, we contact and we work with the sources. Let them do their work. Let them do according to our needs, if possible, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's clear, yes. More question. One more from Finland, please.
Thanks. Not a long time ago, I saw some plans for GDR, Global Group Register, by UN. If you have any news on that, I'd be pleased to hear.
So that I can answer right away before we go to the panel. So we're also working on it. So that is, we did go through a restructuring at the UN, but it is being picked up by the new group. So I'm no longer in there. We did some work. We had a group working on it. It is, and I think that's something that Maria Rosa can confirm. Even if you have a small number of large M&Es, you have a lot of affiliates. So we have about 40,000 units in there, but it can be, I think we are looking at the top 100 also. So we are comparing notes at some point. We also talk to the same people. I think within the group of OECD, they do it for their own purpose of the globalization work that they do. We do it from our, we started doing this from the context of the Statistical Commission where we got this mandate to do it. So well, I think we definitely will have to compare notes. And also, let me just add that, so within this, to have a platform to do collective work, I think this is one of the areas, multinational enterprises, where we can do collective work on a cloud server environment. So I think Bertrand mentioned it yesterday. We have this global platform by the Global Working Group. We was put together by ONS UK, and that can be used also, I think, would be a very good project to bring things together and work together on that. But that's on the side. Now I'll go back to the panelists. I can say beforehand, both Maria Rosa and Zolt did not prepare the papers on this, so it's difficult for them to answer, but please go ahead, pick up what you can answer and then go ahead, please.
Thank you, and thank you all for the questions. I will try to answer as best as I can, and then you have the contact of my colleague. So I will start by following up on what Ronald was saying, in the sense that the measuring in the proper way multinational activities and the breakdown by countries of the affiliate is a very difficult task. So the fact that there are several initiatives at the same time, I see it as a positive, as something positive. The most important is that there is communication between and exchange between the different initiatives, and at the level of the OECD certainly is what colleagues working on the ADIM are doing. Ronald, you asked at the beginning about the update and the timeliness. This is certainly one of the objectives of the ADIMA database, being timely, because one of the main motivation was in a sense, was the accident, if I can call it this, simplified this way, of the GDP, the Irish, what became known as the Irish case, and the fact that from one year to the other, the GDP of Ireland grew of 26%. And then what was behind this very impressive result, it was that activity of multinational, in particular one multinational had changed in such a way that to completely affect in a biased way the measure of the GDP, so a crucial macroeconomic statistics. How this is related to timeliness, so what my colleagues want to do is to provide information that is useful. Rico, you ask useful to whom? Useful to analysts, but also to statistical offices and to statisticians that at the national level work on profiling. So what they would like to do is also to feed your work with additional information that complete the one that you already compile in a timely way, because the problem measuring macroeconomic statistics and the GDP, you don't want an update of ADIMA every 5 years. You need an annual update. How feasible is this to be done? I think that it is feasible to the extent that the type of the mechanism, the approach that they have designed for the construction of the database is such that timeliness is incorporated, which is by exploiting information from the and identifier from the LEI, by doing this review and web scraping, which at the moment involve lot of human work, but this is why they combined to the review and of the corporate account report, the financial report and account report, this new method of web scraping that simplify and accelerate what the human analysis can do. This brings me to the validation, the question of Barry about scaling from 37 to 100 to 500, how this is possible, and also the link to the other project. I think there is complementarity. It's not a reproduction of what others are doing. It's not what people do at the profiling that you do at the national level is similar, but is the scope of the exercise is I would say larger than what Eurostat is doing with the Eurogroup, because it looks globally and not only at MNEs, European MNEs and their affiliate in the world, but you would not capture in the Eurogroup multinational that are based in where the headquarters is in a country outside the European Union. The use, I said, is meant to feed the work of, is meant not only to be useful for analysts interested in MNE's activity, but also to complement information collected by profiler at the national level. So the information will be available. It will be a database on OECD.stat with all information accessible for any researcher, not only in the organization but outside. Then for the moment I'll stop and maybe.
Okay, so
Thank you. Zsolt,
I
please.
can also share our experiences and try to answer to the question. So update is important because what we see, groups are changing. So at least 10% of each group is changing from year to year. On average, this is the number what we see in changes on the legal units in the structure. So updates should be done yearly. If you start with this exercise, you can stop because this data will be outdated in short time. Was a question also how artificial intelligence could be used to improve these data, what we can retrieve. I think there are solutions for this. For example, you can create classification codes based on descriptions. What I know, ONS is already using this in the National Register. Based on business descriptions, they're creating the classification codes. So this was not in our focus, but this can be improved in the future. That was the question of Rico on the whole group. So these numbers are for the whole group, for the global group. The total numbers refer to the group. We have a group identifier. We don't communicate them to the contractor for confidentiality reasons, so we communicate only the name of the group. And what population of EGR could be covered by this source? I think we have in EGR 110,000 groups. I think this is only good for the medium and large groups. Something like 2,000-3,000 groups could have in Wikipedia such a company profile, not more. Small groups, for sure, they don't have any presence over there. Concerning the accuracy of these sources, what we used, what we have seen compared to data to annual reports published by the companies, the data are accurate. Of course, human validation is needed, so I would not load this data immediately to EGR. Somebody should check it before to see obvious errors like problems with the decimals in the numbers. But normally, if somebody takes the effort to upload these numbers to Wikipedia, these are the numbers really which are in the annual reports. And so who is updating Wikipedia, as we had this question? I think those are volunteers or most probably companies themselves. They do these updates on the Wikipedia. And we could also ask the groups directly. Well, Eurostat cannot because we are not authorized to make direct service for the countries, but the national offices, they could. But we see that this information is available somewhere on the internet, so we could also make a try to do a web scraping without increasing the burden on those businesses.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Can I
One
add
more, one last remark, Maria-Rosa.
No, yes, because I think we didn't address the Roland question about veracity, which is an important question, and the benchmarking, and so I think I cannot describe the entire type of validation which is done by the colleagues, but what they are doing is really crossing information from the different sources. So what do you find in the financial report about the total revenues? And then once you establish where are the affiliates and where they are, with information on website, country website of the affiliate, you collect information and you cross with the total. So they are doing all this type of cross-checking by using the different sources that in the case of the OECD project is not Wikipedia, but is other type of, or by the way, it is possible, but I do not have the impression that Wikipedia is included in the type of sources that they have searched. As I said at the end, they are also considering new possibility, but what they had in mind was more the job vacancy website and this type of information. So the veracity and the validation come from cross-checking, accurate cross-checking of all the information that are collected from the different sources.
Thank you. I think that concludes our session on session 5 on new data sources. So we've seen the national data efforts before and now the international efforts. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but it is some work which is important for good, especially globalization statistics. We really need to know the structures of the enterprise groups, and we need to know it fairly quickly. So updating is a must. I would like to thank the panelists. I think there is another presentation now. Don't go away. Claude, don't go away. It's going to be.
C'est additional, non, c'est pas ça? C'est quoi ça? De Eurostat, business? Non, ça c'est quoi?
Non, c'est pas Eurostat.
Ok.
Non.
Alors non, je sais pas.
Non.
Ok.
Ce qu'on doit faire, c'est après, vendredi ou jeudi, faire une copie de tout. Parce qu'il y a certaines présentations qui ont été faites.
Oui, bien sûr. Ouais, ça marche. Je crois qu'on l'a quand même, mais bon. Ici, là. Ouais, checker là.
Pas ça. Guidance.
Ok, maintenant, il faut juste faire comme ça, je crois, non?
Okay. Please.
Status of the project, the structure and content of the guidelines, as well as presenting to you the members of the task force. In 2013, the Conference of European Statisticians noted the growing importance of entrepreneurship statistics. As statistical business registers, already play the central role in the production of economic statistics, it seemed only natural that with the use of additional data sets already assembled by national statistics offices and the inclusion of longitudinal information, the SBR as the backbone once again would have the most potential for the successful production of demography and entrepreneurship statistics. In 2016, the CES established the Task Force for the Development of Guidelines and to seek international harmonization in developing the infrastructure to support the production of these new kinds of statistics. According to the terms of reference, the guidelines provide guidance on the development and maintenance of the SBR required for production of business demography and entrepreneurship statistics, linking the SBRs with information from other data sources with a view to be used as entrepreneurship indicators, and to provide practical examples. A required SBR should include retroactive updates to business characteristics such as classifications, size, and statuses, and easy tracking of units through time, or in other words, a longitudinal SBR. The guidelines are being written and are consistent with international manuals in this domain, such as the Guidelines on Statistical Business Registers, Manual and Business Demography Statistics by Eurostat and OECD, and Business Registers Recommendations Manual. And I will pass it on to Norbert to give you more of the details.
So, thank you. Well, a little bit on the status of the guidelines. They are more or less completed. We have been distributed in spring this year to the countries of the European Economic Commission for Europe. And in June, the Conference of European Statisticians approved and endorsed these guidelines, and also said that all the issues that are in the chapter on future work and research should be dealt with further in appropriate meetings, like the joint meeting of Eurostat, OECD, and UNECE on statistical business register taking place every second year, but also in the Wiesbaden Group meetings. So, yes, I said already that the guidelines are at the final editing stage, but we have not yet really finalized it because we are waiting for a decision of the Conference of Labor Statisticians, which meet in October 2018 on the revision of the international classifications of status in employment. So this classification, the current one is from 1993, and the new one has been elaborated in the last few years by the International Labour Office. And why is this important for us? It is important because we need a kind of definition of who is an entrepreneur. So normally in most of our statistics, we view an entrepreneur as a self-employed, sole proprietor businessman, which clearly is an entrepreneur, that's for sure. But if you consider that this entrepreneur might change the legal form, for instance, to a limited liability company, then suddenly his economic or social security status would change from self-employed to employed, and we would have an undercoverage of our entrepreneurship information. So this issue is dealt with in this classification on the status of employment. Therefore, we are waiting that this classification is officially approved. It would not be good if we publish a manual and 2 weeks later, then there comes some new information out. So the point is that owner-managers of incorporated enterprises should also be viewed as entrepreneurs. And this is not only a problem for business demography statistics or entrepreneurship statistics, but in general, I think, for our business statistics. So in our business statistics, we want to build economic reality and not reality of the administrative data system. So I think we should also consider, and I'm not sure I know that some countries do it already, but I'm not sure if other countries do it already, and I think discussions would certainly be needed in this issue of who are the entrepreneurs, who are the ones